everybody, and welcome to another episode of Connect Conversations. Today's conversation is all about managing an aging, retiring workforce, and it's brought to you a part of Mobius Connect's ongoing YouTube series, Connect Conversations. I'm Kim Fugger, the manager of Mobius Connect, and I will be your moderator for today's session. First, I'd like to take a moment to introduce the host of Connect Conversations series, Global Reliability Improvement experts Doug Plucknett and Ron Moore. Hi, guys.
Hey, good morning, afternoon. It is, I reckon.
Happy New Year. Happy afternoon. Well, before I officially pass the microphone over to you guys, I just want to encourage our audience here today to submit any questions that you may have into the question panel, and we'll have Doug and Ron answer them live on the air. Doug and Ron are here to provide their advice and perspectives from their experiences, and they're here to help you. All right, guys, I'm going to go ahead and pass things over to you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, but today's topic is managing an aging workforce or the effect of that. And I reckon Doug and I are eminently qualified because we're both old and hopefully continuing to age. You know, it's better than not aging. So
that's for sure.
Anyways, but I think that wasn't really the point. I was talking about managing the departures of all of the folks that are in our age range. There's something like 20 million workers out there that will soon be eligible to retire. So how do we manage that? How do we replace all that smarts, that technology, that skill, and so on? Had a couple of kind of introductory comments, and then I'll bounce it off Doug. I guess the first one is this, or maybe three comments, really. The first one is this. According to the folks that study this, in a typical company, only about 30% of the workforce is engaged. And they happen to be about 3 times more productive than the rest of the folks. And about 50% are disengaged. Now, that doesn't mean they're not working. It just means that they're not enthusiastic in their work and they don't seek solutions to problems. They're doing a little bit of sightseeing, maybe. And then there are about 20% that are actively disengaged. That is, they are actually a detriment to your performance. And so one of the questions that we have to ask ourselves is, what are we going to do to get those other 7 folks actively engaged? And yeah, we won't get all of them, but if we can get the 2 guys that are actively disengaged to be, more along the lines of doing the minimum, and 2 or 3 of those folks in the 5 that are, just doing the minimum to be more active, then we'd go a long way towards supplanting the workforce, and wouldn't necessarily have to add more people. So that's one comment. The second one is that a lot of those folks out there who want to retire just won't be able to, because they haven't put away the money that they need to live, in the lifestyle to which they've become accustomed. So a lot of those folks are going to, continue on for a period, which gives you a little bit of slack in the time you might have. And then the last point is the fact that, most of these plants are going to follow the pattern of farmers. 50, 100 years ago, maybe even just 50 or more years ago, 50% of the workforce worked on farms. And now it's about, 3%. And in 1970, about 30% of the workforce worked in factories, and now it's about 12%. So we're going to continue to see an evolution of the workforce vis-a-vis automation and robots and that sort of thing. But that in turn requires a higher skill level of folks who are going to tend to all that equipment, because things are still going to break and still going to need to be tended to and still going to need to be operated, though likely with a much higher level of skill. So those are just a few comments, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the details of what you might do to address some of this. Doug, let me stop jawing on and let you put in
I'm
there.
just thinking about some of those statistics you threw out there, and with the folks that are disengaged, and if you're looking at saying, gee, what the right thing for them is, if we can't turn them around, is to show them the door,
Yeah,
right?
but there is that.
And
But you
then,
got to try to turn them around first.
oh, absolutely, absolutely, right. But then you're also dealing with this aging workforce where you got folks that are aging out. They've got the money to go, and then they do like I just announced and say, okay, I'm throwing in the towel. I've had enough.
Yeah, Doug,
Right.
by the way, just announced he quit. So, well, quit's kind of a harsh term. He's retiring to go do lots of other things that he enjoys more, I suppose, so
Fun things. Let's hope.
yeah. So
So when you look at those numbers, it's one of those things where you go, holy smokes, if we get a bunch of folks that age out, and then you look at the statistics of who's engaged and who's not engaged, you better hope that those 30% are relatively young folks, right?
yeah.
And
Yep.
the truth of the matter is you're going to find probably a distribution of those that, yeah, there's some folks that are aging out in that category as well, that just enjoyed what they did and stuck around because they enjoyed it, or were good at it, or were experts in it.
Yeah.
That's really where the problem starts to arise. Is it's one thing to replace bodies, it's another thing to replace experience, right?
Yeah. Well, one of the things I think, these companies need to do is to, start some sort of campaign that promotes, jobs in manufacturing as high skill jobs.
Yeah.
The, too often you hear, particularly on movies, plays or in some, series or whatever, you hear the phrase, well, he's working at a quote dead end factory job. Well, if that's the message that's being conveyed, then who wants to work in a dead end job, no matter what you're doing, And, most of these jobs down the road in the future are going to be, high skill, high engagement jobs they're not dead end. In fact, they have a reasonably good future and pretty good pay, because you move into supervisory role, manager role, and so on. But even if you don't do that, you're going to advance your skills, particularly the folks that are, mechanics, millwrights, and so on. And, even the operators are having to learn more advanced tools to manage the process, either in statistical process control or in, keeping track of, production losses and the causes and that sort of thing. So these are not dead end jobs. And anybody that portrays it that way is just wrong. And so the folks running these plants need to make sure that everybody out there understands these are good paying jobs with a future, with a career path. So that's one of the things I think they need to do. Doug, any comment on that?
Yeah, well, one of the things that I have noticed, and probably more in the last 10 years than any time before that, is when we talk about it not being a dead end, that folks are really pushing that envelope. The folks that work in the trades and the experienced operators by, we have this computer age where they can go in and continuously look for jobs and look for better pay if the company they're working for isn't going to give it to them. Right.
Yeah.
And so you'll see there's more movement and mobility in those jobs than there ever was before. I'll use my son as an example. He just sent me a little text message last week with a exclamation point that said, hey, I made 6 figures this year and I still got a paycheck coming yet. Right. And so he was quite proud of that, and as he should be. Right. And he is one that has pushed that envelope to say, okay, I'm a skilled machinist and I understand the programming, the CNC type stuff in the machine tool business. And so he's picked up jobs where basically what he does now is he's, professional troubleshooter on 3 ships. Right. So he goes in and figures out what's wrong and gets things started and gets crew going on it, and then off to the next thing that might need his attention. So
Yeah, yeah. Uh, some of the particulars, though, we've talked kind of broadly about strategy around, promoting these jobs as good paying career paths, and we've talked a little bit about engaging the workforce and so on. The so what are some particular things that we ought to be doing, maybe? Well, one of them might be to, reinvigorate a moribund apprenticeship program that you can then sell to your recruits along the lines of skill development and a career path, not just a so-called dead end job. And I think there's been a bit of a resurgence of some of these apprenticeship programs. For a little while, years ago, they were sort of dying out for some reason, which was crazy in my mind. So that's one thing. Doug, do you have a comment on that?
yeah, in the area where I live, which is Rochester, New York, we're actually seeing them advertised on radio and TV, apprentice programs, because we live in a part of upstate that there is quite a bit of manufacturing, and so they're constantly looking for talent. And so now the companies themselves have started recreating those programs, whereas I think previous what they'd done is they left it up to community colleges and things like that,
Yeah.
and they're just not putting them out fast enough.
Yeah.
So now, you're hearing companies like ITT and such say, "Hey, we've got an apprenticeship program, and we're open for applications, and come put your name in." Right?
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing too, you just touched on it, is, companies developing relationships with those community colleges and helping them construct these programs, wherein you get an associate's degree, but you also you become, say, an electrician, level 1 or whatever it is, a journeyman electrician. And so developing those relationships with community colleges, trade schools, and the like. I think most of those schools are looking for an avenue to grow and improve their offering. And it just seems like a natural fit for the companies to seek those partnerships and do that.
Yeah.
And, I see a little bit of it locally up at Pellissippi State, which is a local community college, but I also see it over at the University of Tennessee, which has specific, workshops and seminars that last for a week that will train you in hydraulic systems or train you in vibration analysis and that sort of thing. So all those programs need to be given a lot of attention by these companies and promoted, developed, and partnership. Need partnerships with those folks. So, Doug, anything on that?
Now we get back and probably really need to touch on the HR piece of this, of how do you hire, how do you control it, how do you know it's coming before it's too late, right? And I can remember way back in my Kodak days, which was over 23 years ago, hearing before I even left that the mean age of our maintenance workforce was 47, and I was at the time 39, right? You think about that. Okay, I've been to companies now in the past 10 years where I'm hearing those numbers are in the 50s, and that gets pretty scary.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's when you start saying to the folks in HR, you got some work to do, right? Or you're going to be in trouble, because, if you got let's just use a number, say they got 50 people in their maintenance department and their average age is 52, you're going to have a bunch of people retiring in the next possibly 5 to 10 years, right?
Yep.
Where are you getting that help? 5 to 10 years is a very small envelope now to train, to get somebody educated, to go through an apprenticeship program and then gain some experience. You would hope to get, 4 or 5 years experience before you're cutting them loose on their own too. Right.
Yeah. Well, it's my understanding, Doug, and you'd know more about this because you've been more closely associated with it. a good apprenticeship program will run you about 4 years or so.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, so, and then after that, like you said, before you cut them loose, you might want to have them have another year, 2 or 3, out there on their own where they have
Yeah.
some backup and some, senior level people that can backfill in case they have a question or a problem. So yeah, I completely agree with you. Now,
So one of those strategies, especially on companies that are, 24/7, is, they'll take those younger folks that come out of the apprenticeship and they'll work straight days, right? Whereas the older fellas tend to go off and work on that shift work where you're more out on your own, because the crews are smaller. And that's kind of one way to manage it. But realistically, that experience is something that until you get that, you're not as effective as that person that's been around for 10 years, right?
yeah. Well, I'm a little bit surprised that the older folks would want to work that shift. I'd want to go home at the end of the day, but but if that's what they want, more power to
I'm with
them.
you too. I was lucky in that I never, well, number one, I had a father that said to me, don't ever go on the shifts because you'll never be able to afford to go off them, right?
Oh, yeah, okay.
And he says, and then what happens is you end up with your kids in high school, right? And they're doing all the sports and all the interesting things that you want to go see, and you're on shifts, you can't get there, right?
Yeah.
Or you miss at least a third of what they've got going on, right?
Yeah.
And if
Yeah.
you're a good parent, a third isn't a very good number, right?
Yeah. Now, another thing that kind of ties into all this, both in terms of trade schools and the community colleges and apprenticeship programs, is having a more intensive training program itself. And, that is going and looking at your workforce, looking at the skills that you will be needing, looking at the gaps that are there, both in the existing workforce, for some years to come, plus in the retiring or those folks that you anticipate will leave, and developing some internal training and development and a lot of hands-on stuff such that you actually help, supplement or support, in a fairly intense fashion, the apprenticeship programs and the local, community colleges. So, and trade schools. So, and, my experience has been that most companies do not have particularly good training programs. And, maybe I'm wrong, but that's my general impression. They don't train folks in the right skills, and they don't train them enough.
Right.
And that's the fault of, whoever the boss is over the plant or the company, not developing a good HR program that has a good training and development process. So any thoughts on that?
Well, a couple of things that seems to be one that, over the last 20 years that the companies cut pretty heavy there,
Yeah.
right? In terms of doing it internally. And I'm a little bit selfish as a consultant, which you are, well, go ahead, cut to your internal people because you only have to hire me. And I'm
Yeah.
right. I cost more than they do. I can tell you that.
I'm not cheap. So,
But I think the place that most companies lack, and this is just across the board, really, is they don't go to schools and recruit, right? They're not
Yeah.
going to high schools and saying, "Hey, we got good jobs as operators, we got good jobs as tradespeople, and these are jobs that you can do and raise a family on and have a home." And those are things that it's a message that has to get out there.
Yeah.
I wish I could say that I was ready for college when I finished high school. I wasn't. That's why I went once and they threw me out. Right.
Oh, well.
Had too much fun and was a little too hard headed, and ended up doing it at night and doing very well, to the point where I bragged to my nieces and nephews about Uncle Doug's and my own children, by the way, GPA when he finished at RIT, which was 3.84, not
Oh, wow.
4.0, but not bad, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah,
So,
well, for what it's worth, Doug, I wasn't ready for college the first year I went either.
yeah,
So I was otherwise occupied, you know, chasing Kathy and, playing chess and doing other, non-value add, skill add activities. And, fortunately, I've managed to get into West Point before my grades caught up with me. And then that set the stage for, you know, all the good things that, have happened since then. So, I lucked out, frankly, because I was
yeah, it
not
worked out great
very
for me
good.
too. I
Yeah.
did meet my wife in that first year, but I also can tell you that I had just way too much fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Me
that
too.
was part of it was, being a farm kid, I always had my own money. And I had plenty of it when I went to school, especially when, 32-ounce draft beers were 40 cents, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
You could get a bunch of them, but
Yeah.
there was
Too
nobody
many.
even there, at high school, number two, college, to say, hey, there's these other opportunities that are out there. And, gosh, if companies would just go into high schools and say, hey, we got these jobs, not only we have these jobs, but sweeten the pot a little bit and say, we'll pay for you to go at night. If you're doing something that works for us in terms of, whether it's engineering or business or you name it, something that when you finish, you can stay here and will you use you in that role? Holy smokes, right? With the cost of college today, you
Yeah.
might attract some people, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Now, one other thing, that we haven't touched on sort of obliquely relative to skills development and so on is really, trying to apply what you and I might call the reliability process. So, for example, if you're in a manufacturing plant and you're currently running an OEE of 60%, which is fairly typical, 50 to
Yeah.
60%, and you could get that to 75 or 80%, well, you could produce the same volume for 1/3 the workforce or 1/4 the workforce or whatever it might be, whatever the level of improvement is. So, that's I think a really key thing. And it also gives you time, because it takes time to do this, but it gives you time to begin looking at, the market, begin looking at the future needs of the workforce and to develop a proper strategic plan. So that's an area that I think deserves a lot of attention, is actually improving your internal performance by engaging the workforce. That 30% that is engaged, try to find 3 or 4 other folks that want to be as engaged in doing, problem solving, problem resolution, process improvement, that sort of thing, and eliminating the defects in your work processes, in your equipment, and so on. And if you do that, you're going to have a lot more capacity, even though the workforce is retiring and leaving you. And certainly would give you time to, fill in those gaps as I hope, as you build your market share and grow the business. And so that, I think, also needs a lot more attention. So things like engaging the workforce, the reliability process for process improvement, and the rest of the things that we've mentioned there.
And the great part about that, Ron, is if you keep it simple, right?
Yeah.
You can do that and eliminate a whole boatload of defects with a few simple tools, right? By teaching how people problem solving techniques, right? And how to identify failure modes and how to eliminate them and so on and so forth. Get people engaged that way, right?
Yeah.
Have them, and I think back to my own career, the group that I first worked with, there was 28 guys, and I'll honestly tell you, at least 20 of us were actively engaged. And it almost became a competition, right?
Yeah.
Which crappy jobs can we eliminate, right? The stuff that we've been doing when we first got here that you go, what in the world do we have to do that for? Why does that stupid valve leak all the time? Well, guess what? we don't have the right rated seals in it for the temperature that it runs at. When you start figuring out easy stuff like that and you go, holy smokes, I don't have to do that job anymore. Right. Thank
Yeah.
goodness. Right.
Yeah.
It becomes one of those things that people feed off one another, and and we love doing it together. Right. A group of guys, we'd sit down in a room, and our boss was smart enough to give us that time. That's the other thing that companies forget about is, if you want people to solve problems, you got to give them time to solve problems.
Yeah.
Right. And they let us dedicate an hour or two a week to sit down together and talk about problems and solve them.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, to that point, these companies need to put in place what I think of as structured improvement time.
Yeah.
Where weekly or monthly or whatever it is, you set aside a certain amount of time to get the folks doing the work to solve the problems with the work. And you provide the support structure for them to do that, both the time, the tools, the analytical skills, or you bring that in from externally to help folks sort that stuff out. And if you do that, I think you'll be surprised at how much improvement you can get by just engaging the workforce in doing, process improvement, problem solving, and that sort of thing. And so it's just I think a huge missed opportunity. I've said for years now, if you want to understand the problems with the work, talk to the workers
Imagine
and
that.
get them involved in helping you solve the problems. Now, a lot of them they won't be able to solve individually because they don't have the time, the tools, the resources, and so on. But once they identify them, then you can involve them in helping resolve that and create a little pride, a little enjoyment, a little trust. And those are things I think that's up to managers and executives and leaders to create that environment for folks doing that. And if you do all these things that we've been, blathering on about, I think you'll manage this, if not very effectively, certainly much more effectively than you otherwise would have. So now one kind of hindrance to all this, I think, is, and it always will be, is the reluctance on the part of executives, particularly at the CEO level, to, in effect, take some risk about putting these kinds of systems and programs in place because they either don't understand them or they don't see the quarterly payback. And some of these things don't happen quarterly. A lot of these things happen over the course of years, not months. And so there has to be some sort of strategic way of thinking in order to get those guys to take some risk, particularly today, for example. Everybody keeps talking about there might be a recession, might be a global recession. Well, that may be, but that doesn't eliminate the need to attend to these issues. And, you may have to take a hit quarterly, but it's the right thing to do strategically. And if we could get more CEOs thinking strategically as opposed to this quarter's 10K, I think that company and the country, in fact, whatever economy you're in, would be far better off if you could get some of that thinking going up front.
It's funny, because the message really is don't stop doing the right things just because you think something else might happen.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Yeah. And you'll be better off. And even if you go into recession, I understand you got to cash flow the business. I get that part. I've run a business. But if you do the right things, even during a downturn in business, when the market comes back, you'll be ready, and you're ready to go gangbusters because you've got things ready during that period when you had, say, a little bit of a slowdown. Because now you got more time to do that sort of thing. So damn it, you ought to do it.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll get off my soapbox.
It's you talk about that at the CEO level, and that's one of the things I think if I could advise people coming into this business, it took me a while to learn that don't expect miracles from the office, right? Because
Don't
they're no
expect
different.
speed either.
They're they're no different than the rest of the world. When I first, and I don't have a ton of experience, not nearly as much as you, in dealing with those folks. I've had 3 or 4 good opportunities to deal with the corporate folks, and but when you come to realize that, like any other job, you had in those positions, you have people that 10% of them are amazing, 80% of them are middle of the road, and 10% of them, Lord knows how they got that job, right? Uh,
Yep.
and the ones in the middle of the road, they pretty much just read stuff that's going on or attend conferences and say, what's everybody else doing? They don't really have any great ideas of their own,
Hmm.
right? What can I try now, right? And if you don't have the stick-to-itiveness to go through and do the things that we talk about, defect elimination, RCM tools, root cause analysis that help you improve the bottom line, right? If you don't have that stick-to-itiveness, then it becomes, what's next? What's
Yeah.
next? What's everybody else doing? What are they doing? It's just in time. It's Six Sigma. It's the list goes on and on and on, right? And in reality, they're all just looking to get rid of defects, right? And
Yeah.
improve performance. Right?
And the
So,
guys doing the work know where the defects are.
yeah,
So talk to them.
exactly.
It's not that complicated.
Yeah.
So
Uh,
anyways, by the way, I think your numbers may be a little optimistic. I guess I would put it at more like 10% are amazing. And then you got this gradation down to about 20% are just crap.
yeah.
So
I'm trying to be nice, Rob.
okay, yeah, that's fine, but that there are far too many people in very senior positions that are, I don't know, they got there by default. They followed the Peter principle. I don't know what it was.
Right.
They're not bad people. They
But
just
it's
not competent
every
in that
career is
role.
like that, right? Every
Yeah.
career is like that. But when I worked in the trades people were like that. There was 10% that I worked with that were amazing. There was a bunch of guys in the middle, and then there was some that you don't want to
Yeah.
learn from that one over there.
Dude. Yeah.
Those are not good techniques going on right there.
Right.
Put that
Well,
big pair of channel locks and that hammer away from them, and probably we'd all be better off.
their precision hammer. It's got
And
an
I've
impact gauge on it,
it at times irritated even my wife by telling kids that teachers were the same way, right? It's when you get done with school, you're going to have that handful that were fantastic, that you remember, that you wish you could spend more time with, and you're going to have another small handful that you go, wow, I'm glad that was only a year, right?
Yeah. Well, it took me years to appreciate those teachers that I now look back on with admiration, respect, and appreciation. At the time it was, are you kidding me? We got more homework. We got another test. Oh God. Little side story. Ms. Prater was our math teacher, and she was really good, excellent. And she says, well, tomorrow we're going to have a test. And I said, well, wait a minute, Miss Prater, tomorrow we got homework too. She says, yes, I know. And I said, but that ain't fair. She says, I don't care. if you've done the work all along, you're ready for the test. You don't need to
That's
worry
right.
about it. So she was really hard, but she was great. So fond memories in retrospect. They weren't fond at the time. So anyways, well, I've just about run out of thoughts on all this. I mean, we could probably talk some
I
more if we had some
was going to
questions.
just quickly jump back and say, this is a problem that everybody's having, right? And if you don't recognize it now and start dealing with it, it's only going to get worse in the next 5 years. I think that beyond that, I think we finally come to this recognition. You said that right at the get-go that those programs are starting back up, and some companies are even doing them on their own, and community colleges and school colleges are starting to offer those things again. Man, go out and start recruiting, right?
Yeah.
And you can recruit in high school, you can recruit in college, you can do job fairs. My goodness, I'm amazed today at the number of companies that are doing headhunting, right? Out there placing people and looking for people and doing the work of those HR people by going out and beating the bushes and finding folks to do the work that needs to be done. If you want, but that's an expensive way to fill jobs, I can tell you that.
Yeah.
So get out there and get your HR people working on it and get them engaged in the high schools, and get your workforce even right out there to attend those things and tell people what those jobs are like.
Yeah.
Right.
And just one other comment, just that you prompted, just hire for aptitude and attitude.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then have programs, either apprenticeship or trade school or whatever it is, where you can give those people with the right attitude and the right aptitude the skills they need to make you successful. So that's my advice. Yeah, if skills come with it, great. But I'll take aptitude and attitude over. I give priority to that over skills.
Absolutely. It's funny, Ron. I think back to 40 years ago when I was first getting into all this. As I said, I tried college. They threw me out, but I worked a bunch of years on the farm before that. And when I went through my apprenticeship, I would say that probably 30 to 40% of the other kids that got hired were also farm kids, right?
Yeah.
And well, what was Kodak looking at? Gee, we know
aptitude and attitude.
We know who will get up in the morning and come to work, right?
Right. Yeah.
If you grew up on a farm, you've got that work ethic. But the same thing happens, who are those kids that at 15 years old went to McDonald's or Burger King, or I don't care, wherever, the local grocery store, and went out and got a job?
Yeah.
Right. If they showed the ambition to do that, you've got some of that aptitude and attitude going on already.
Yeah. Yep. All righty. Well, we've blown away another 45 minutes or so, 40 minutes of your time, whoever's out there. We certainly appreciate you coming, and hope we've given you a few tips and some guidance on what to do about managing an aging workforce. So, Kim, are you out there?
I thought I heard her.
Yeah. She's getting gutters fixed today, so she may have to edit this part out. But there's a guy banging on a roof, and so she had to mute us there for a while. We'll see if we can get her back here and let her deal with whatever she needs to edit out.
So, Ron, did you have a good holiday season?
No.
No?
This is a short answer. Kathy and I both had strep.
And I think we shared a little bit of that information. My wife got the COVID before.
Geez. Wow.
Yeah. So Christmas is actually going to happen this weekend at the Plucknett household. We have all the grandkids over.
Yeah.
So
well, that's wonderful. It's good that you get to make it up. I mean, I went to that conference down in Florida and came back and had strep and gave it to Kathy, and there we were.
Kim, you look a little bit different today.
You can see me. No, we have a guest with us today.
The screen flipped and I went over where you were.
Oh, it's because I was turning on my mic for you all. Sorry.
So do we have a question?
No.
Sorry, Ron and Doug, I missed most of the part actually. I wanted to participate, but then some emails and all came and then I started looking. But the topic is very interesting. What I understand is the aging thing, yeah?
Yes.
Yes.
as you know, I am also in the same aging category, but things things are definitely getting difficult, because now the approach for handling the thing is slightly different, like in our days, or I can take the liberty of saying Ron's days.
Listen, I'm 75, so
No,
our
no, I'm
days
less
covers a
than.
lot of territory.
So there was some, like process, or like, um, especially depending the time frame, like you cannot bypass certain things. You have to do 1 year of this thing, 2 years of this training, three, like it was time based, or time, what's called, controlled. Even if you are smart, you are very good, you cannot bypass that period, maybe
Right.
you go in the upper ceiling after 3 years, but it won't be like in 1 year you are good enough or smart enough to go at the 3 years people. Whereas now, with the
Yep.
access of this technology, or the everything updated, so that's the time part is finished.
Yeah.
If you know certain thing, or you can access that thing, or you can make that thing, or understand that thing, then you are good as 10-year-old experienced person. So that's one of the issue. And this, like, I'm from Canada, so uh, we have serious issues actually, because this aging thing, or certain, what you can say, jobs, or certain field, lots of youngsters are not willing to come.
Right.
So that's getting a big gap, So there are two
Yep.
things I said, actually I mixed up. One is this quick access people want, and same is the tendency of local younger people. They want quick fix, They can't
Yeah.
wait to get the training or pass the test or whatever. So what's your opinion, sir?
Well, my opinion that, first of all, is that you're right about a large swath of younger people. They see folks like, I don't remember the guy that started Facebook. I don't remember his name now. And they
Zuckerberg.
see all these folks, 20, 25-year-old millionaires and billionaires. And they think, well, why not me? Well, the reason why not you is because that's 1 in a million. And you're probably one of the 999,999. So what are you going to do about your career? So there needs to be some expectations set around what's realistic relative to that, and how are you going to build a foundation around actually achieving that. And so I think there needs to be a bit of a sales job on promoting some of these positions and jobs, such that, yeah, it's a career for you and you'll have a good life. And if you happen to be one of those unique folks like Jobs, or like, what was his name again? Zuckerberg, thank you. Then great, go for it.
Who, by the way, was a Harvard student, so he was no slouch to begin with.
Right. Yeah.
You got to have some pretty good grades to get into that school.
Yeah. So, the point here is that you don't necessarily eliminate that dream, but in the meantime, you have to make a living. Right. And you have to prepare yourself, plan B. What if I'm one of that 999,000 plus that doesn't actually become a billionaire at age 25? So anyways, that's my one comment about that. So anything else there?
Well, I'll throw in my 2 cents, because as I said, I started as a tradesperson, and then somehow ended up doing this, working as a consultant, and then traveling the world. And I had teenage kids at the time, and my son was in his early teens, and I can remember him asking me questions like, when I'm not working, I'm up in my office. What are you doing up there working? Well, like, what's your work? Well, I have to write, and I have to get my name out there. I've got to do presentations. I've got to talk with people. If I don't do those things, nobody will ever call me again, and then we'll run out of money. Right.
Yeah. And I won't feed you.
It would be nice if I was just told that we could, swim in the pool and soak in the hot tub and throw the baseball around. That'd be great. but realistically, right, it takes work. Right?
Yeah.
And, you know, part of my work is I'm out with customers, and then the larger part of that is when I'm not with them, trying to find out who's next, right?
Yeah. Or working to get ready for them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's well, anyways, we just need to do a better job with promoting, recruiting, and presenting these careers to these guys, because not everybody's going to be, Zuckerberg, Wozniak, Jobs, and the list is pretty long.
right.
And
And the truth is, and that's the word that needs to get out there, is those manufacturing jobs can provide you what you need to raise a family, right? To
Yeah.
have a home, to do those vacations, to save for retirement.
Yeah.
Those jobs are still there, right?
and to have a good life.
Yeah, and you will have a good life, right?
Yeah.
And that can be a jump start for you even, right? And that's the message you got to get to people is, you don't have to do that the rest of your life, but in the meantime, it's there for you, right? Take
Yeah.
that, and as I said, then go to night school if you're not happy with that as a career. That's what got me going, as a pipe fitter, and my back started getting sore, and you start going, geez, can I do this? Am I gonna be able to do it when I'm 60? Right? I think I better go to school, right? I think that I want to take that ceiling away that is there because I don't have a degree.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, there we go. I don't know if we've solved any problems.
Sorry, one more thing, which is maybe
Sure.
is not connected with this one, but how to participate in this, participate is okay, like to play active role in it, like as a mentor, as a presenter. How it works out, like I've been in my business for more than 40 years and based in Canada and based in worldwide. I always say all the 5 continents. I've been in Middle East, I've been in Europe, I've been in North America, Asia, you name it.
Yeah.
And my specialty is definitely now at this stage is the management thing, but it's more on the lubrication and reliability, like lubrication. So I was wondering, and I want to, as I now at my age, I'm trying to give back to the community, frankly speaking, what I have learned, or I feel that it's my duty to give it back, in that sense. In that sense,
Yeah.
And
so what should you do?
Please.
Well, what I did when I first started doing the consulting shtick is I wrote papers and submitted those to various and sundry magazines. A lot of those are online now, but no matter. And I got myself on the agenda for conferences to speak at conferences. And I contacted University of Dayton and started a program there for reliability engineers. We literally constructed a program where folks like Doug and others, not me, I did the high level, strategy stuff, but you need folks who actually can execute the strategy. So those are, a few of the things that I did to, try to give back and make a living, And
that's good advice. And that's exactly the same way I started, was by writing and presenting.
Yeah.
And then once you get started, it rolls off pretty easy. You think about, there's a number of things to talk about. All you got to do is, go on LinkedIn and look at what people were talking about and say, yeah, hey, I can write some about that and push out 1,500 words and put it in.
Yeah.
Right.
But another possibility, I don't know how Doug feels about this one though, is, finding somebody, for example, I still work with life cycle engineering as a contractor, and they do a lot of the, upfront stuff that I'm not really interested in, frankly. And then I actually come in behind them and do the work. So you can have, partnerships with companies that hire contractors, like me or Doug or whoever, that help, they just help you develop those contacts and and provide that kind of information and skill to those folks out there who need it. And so that's another possibility. Yeah.
All right, gentlemen.
Yeah, no, it's been very interesting. Actually,
Okay.
I've got some
Yeah.
things I've actually got to do
Yeah.
this afternoon.
Please. And let's, I think so we are connected in LinkedIn, I understand, Ron and
Yes.
Doug. Yeah, so we'll take it up from there. Thanks a
All
lot.
right.
It's
Okay.
always been, I understand the recording will come later to us. Yeah,
Yes,
Yep.
it will.
yeah.
Yep.
Because
She may have to edit some of our ad-libbing there, so.
You guys did great
Or not.
today.
or maybe highlight that portion.
Yeah, I like that idea.
Right.
No,
Well,
thanks a lot.
Great.
Please
Okay.
go ahead.
Yes. Well, thank you again today, Doug and Ron, for your awesome session. On behalf of our entire team here at Mobius Connect, thank you to our wonderful audience for joining us too. Just a quick reminder, as you can see past episodes of Connect Conversations on YouTube and Reliability Connect. Be on the lookout as new episodes typically air every other Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern. If you are interested in engaging with other industry professionals or would like to participate on the industry's live feed and forums on Mobius Connect, visit mobiusconnect.com. Thanks again for joining us. Have a great day. Please stay safe, and we'll see you in 2 weeks for a case study illustrating installation and startup. Have a good one, guys.